Okay.
Record. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for coming to our program, Kings Bay Library. My name is Liana Laverdova. I am a neighborhood library supervisor of the Kings Bay Library, Brooklyn, New York. And today we're happy to present you a mystery writer, Miss Betty Webb, who lives in Arizona. I just connected with Miss Webb, and she graciously agreed to participate in this conversation, which is going to record and then place on YouTube and on our Facebook page. So first of all, several words about Miss Webb. As a journalist, Betty Webb interviewed US presidents, astronauts who walked on the moon, and Nobel Prize winners, as well as the homeless, the dying, and polygamy runaways. Yeah. She is also the author of 18 novels, most of them mysteries. Her Dark Leonard Jones mysteries based on stories she covered as a journalist include Desert Lost, one of the top 5 mysteries of 2009. Library Journal, according to Library Journal, Desert Wives, eye-popping, wrote New York Times. Betty's recent Desert Redemption also won a major national acclaim. Publishers Weekly calls the Leonard Jones novel Mysteries with a Social Conscience. Betty's humorous Gun Zoo series debuted with a well-received The Anteate of Death. Anteate and the following Gun Zoo books have won accolades from animal and conservation groups for highlighting the ongoing deforestation of the rainforest and other eco-disasters. A syndicated book reviewer for more than 30 years, Betty is a member of National Federation of Press Women, the Authors Guild, and Mystery Writers of America. She has also served as a writer in residence for various libraries, Tempe, Avondale, and Mesa libraries, all in Arizona, helping aspiring writers with their manuscripts. Betty is currently working on another mystery series set between the two world wars in France. So we agreed with Ms. Webb that she will talk first about her creativity, whatever she wants, and for full freedom here. And then any questions from our listeners, please welcome to collect your questions. And by the end of her conversation, she will answer your question. So now, word to you, Betty, please.
Okay, great. What I'm going to do is just talk a little bit about how I got into writing, because I did not plan on doing that. I know a lot of people are born saying, I'm going to be a writer when I grow up. I was not one of them. I wanted to be an artist. And as it turned out, I did become an artist. I worked in graphic design in New York on Madison Avenue for BBD&O, and along with other places in the country. I kind of followed the jobs. And I wound up coming out to Arizona because I was offered a job as creative director of a small boutique agency. So I thought, hey, yeah. And the last winter that I'd lived in New York, it was so cold, my toe got frostbitten while I was standing waiting for my train, because my train ran right along the Hudson. So that's where my station was. And the wind was coming up the Hudson. And by the time I got to work, I was just miserable. When I got home that night, and I was feeling sorry for myself, I got a phone call from my aunt who lived in Arizona, Scottsdale, Arizona. And she said, well, we just finished having a barbecue by the pool. And I thought, what? And so I started sending out resumes, and I got a job, so I moved. But when I was first here, like I say, I was still an artist. I was still a graphic designer. But you know, you get to the point where you have designed packages, you've designed soda drinks, you've designed pancake mix boxes. You've just done it all, and you get tired of it. And a friend of mine who was a theater critic for the large newspaper here, the Tribune, called me and said, you know a lot about theater, don't you? And I said, well, you know, I had season tickets when I lived in New York, and I was always there. And he said, well, could you kind of take over for me? Because I'm going to take a 2-week vacation, and I'd like you to review the plays that I was going to see. So I said, sure. See, that's what happens when you're really dumb about something. You think, oh, what kind of problem could that be? So I went to all of these plays, and I would bang out my reviews on a typewriter, because this was pre-computer. And then I would drive the reviews down to the newspaper. And my friend came back, and about six weeks after he came back, I got a call from his editor, and he said, we're kind of interested in hiring you as a feature writer and arts reporter. And like I said, by then I was so bored with being a graphic designer and doing all these commercial things. I said, okay, yeah. So I became a writer for a reporter for the Tribune, but they wound up putting me in features, which were long articles about artists and musicians. And that's when I got to interview everybody from rock stars to opera stars to Nobel Prize winners, and also found out about polygamy, but I'll come back to that. But anyway, I was pretty darn busy just being a reporter, but one of the jobs they sent me out on was, there was something in Scottsdale that well, we still have, and we'll go back to when the pandemic finishes. It's called the Thursday Night Art Walk. It happens once a month. The art galleries stay open. We got a ton of galleries here in Scottsdale. So I was walking up and down the street, looking at the galleries and writing down, what I thought about them. And as a former artist, I knew a little bit about art. And I had really decided to kind of home in on this one gallery that said they had paintings by, the show was opening for a Native American artist. And that's exciting to me, because if you can see this, I kind of collect Native American jewelry. This is Navajo, by the way. And so I go into the gallery and I look around, and I could tell from one look that the artist was not Native American. You know how I can tell? Because there were nudes of Indian women. No Native American man will paint a woman nude. They will not do it. So I said to the gallery manager, I said, you're false advertising. And she said, no, I'm not. He's Native American. I said, what tribe? She couldn't come up with the tribe. She couldn't figure out, and not all Native Americans are alike. I live 1/2 mile from the Pima Indian Reservation, and they're totally different from the Navajos that live up north. And the Navajos that live up north are totally different from the Apaches who live east. So every tribe is different. And of course, every painter in every tribe is different. So I was kind of curious, and I came storming out of the art gallery. My husband was waiting for me outside. And he said, what's wrong with you? And I said, I am just furious. I could kill that gallery manager. He said, weren't you talking about someday writing a book? And I said, well, yeah. And he said, well, that would be a good murder mystery. You can kill that gallery owner and not have to go to jail. And I thought, that's not a bad idea. So here came the first book, the first mystery that I ever wrote, Desert Noir, which is about a fraudulent gallery owner getting murdered in her art gallery. I had a lot of fun with that. I had a lot of fun. And that's when I realized that writing mysteries is very therapeutic. So one of the things, though, because I was still a reporter, you have to understand, I was still working full time at the paper. I wanted the book to be just about art. I wanted it to be something serious. So what was happening on the news front here is that we had a situation where private investors had managed to get the Arizona Congress to commit eminent domain against a neighborhood in central Phoenix, which was made up both mostly of Hispanic widows. The houses were beautiful old adobes, some more than 100 years old, and some of these women who owned these homes had been born in these homes. But the people who were backing the eminent domain situation were putting their funds together to build a sports arena in that area. And they did manage to get eminent domain passed, which means forcible removal of people from their homes. So what they did, there started to be a fuss because they were paying each homeowner $25,000, when of course their homes were worth so much more than that. So that was in the newspapers at the time, and I thought, I think I'm going to add this to it. So I did. And by the time the book came out, Desert Noir, the investors had upped the savings to the sell point of the homes, Adobe homes, $100, which was a little more reasonable. But still, it was awful because most of these people just got thrown out of their homes. The homes were bulldozed, and now we have two really ugly sports arenas where they were. Got a baseball arena and we've got a football arena. And the only good part of that is we have some really big rock concerts. So if you like rock concert, well, you're in heaven now. But anyway, while I was still working at the paper, I heard and read an article about a 14-year-old girl who had been found dumped by the side of the road up in the desert. And it turned out that she was a rape victim, raped by her uncle, who had legally forcibly married her. They were members of a polygamous sect in northern Arizona. And I read about that and I thought, this is pretty crappy. What in the world is going on up there? So I rented a car and I drove up there to the polygamy compounds. There's about 4 of them still up there. And I had a wig on too, because I know better than to just waltz in under my own name. So I went into the compound. It was called Colorado Sig, even though it's right here in Arizona, and started taking pictures of the young girls who were wives. They called them spiritual wives. Because how the law against polygamy, well, there is now. There was no law against polygamy then, but the way they worked it was the man would legally marry one woman, and then after that he would start marrying kids, call them spiritual wives. And I don't know what it is genetically with these polygamists, but they like very young girls, 11 years old, 12 years old. Give you an idea. Oh, and I have to go back. For my first book, I obviously had to come up with a good detective, and I knew I wanted to be a woman because I was a great reader of Sue Grafton, who is just a marvelous, bless her heart, bless her soul, mystery writer, one of the best. And so I thought, okay, I'm going to have a woman. And I also happened to have a friend who was a foster child. And I thought, I'm going to have her be a woman and a foster child, and I'm going to give her a really rotten background. And so I did. So I made her a private detective, because private detectives can do more actually than the police can as far as getting involved in something goes. The police have to follow the letter of the law. Private detectives can sneak around. So when I started writing Desert Wives, which was about polygamy, there as it is. Oh, and by the way, you'll laugh at this. These people here are all reporters for the paper I worked for. They love dressing up. They're still talking about it. Okay, here is the first paragraph, a short one, of Desert Wives about polygamy. And this is told in my detective, Lena Jones' voice, first person. So here's what she writes. What do you call a dead 68-year-old polygamist? In the case of my 12-year-old client, you call him your fiance. This hit the bestseller list all over the place. And pretty soon, the guy that was running this polygamy compound up at Colorado City, his name was Warren Jeffs. Since I also got into the financial aspects of polygamous, because remember, it's a religion. I'm going to put that in quotes, it's a religion. And therefore, they don't have to pay taxes. So, yeah, right, yeah, that's not true anymore, because I wrote about that in the book. The FBI got a hold of it and thought, oh boy, we're going to get ourselves some taxes. They arrested Warren Jeffs, the leader of the compound. He's now doing 25 to life as a child rapist, which most of his wives were under 13. So that really started, I guess you would say, my career. And then the next book I wrote, Desert Shadows, was about, somebody that I worked with, another reporter, asked me if I'd heard about this really, really awful video game, which was called Border Run. And this was a real game. I don't know if it's still out there, but in Border Run, the gamer has a joystick, and which acts as a gun. And so whenever anyone coming from Mexico would cross the border, they would get points for shooting them. 10 points for everyone they shot, except in the case of pregnant women. Then they'd get 20 points. Now that's a pretty hideous game. So I thought, oh, I think I'm going to write about that. And another thing that people don't know is that polygamists are also white power people, incredibly. I mean, they make the Ku Klux Klan look warm and fuzzy. And I had learned that when I'd gone up there, and plus talked to several escaped polygamy wives, or as we should say, children. So I decided to put the white power movement in Desert Shadows. And that was really interesting, because apparently most people did not know that it was such a growing community of people. And they not only have their own video games, they have their own recording studios where they record white supremacy songs. And then they publish books. So that's all in here, and that created a fuss. The next one was not quite as grim as the other 3 books. It was called Desert Run. And Desert Run got its name because I had heard from another reporter at the newspaper that 1/4 mile away from me, on the others, let's say I've got the Pima Indians living over here, and then 1/4 mile over there was an old World War II prisoner of war camp for Germans that they had captured in the North Sea. And so I thought, that sounds interesting. And then, as a matter of history, 25 of them escaped on Christmas Eve. And they had maps smuggled in. But now remember, we're talking about sailors, and we're in the middle of the desert here. But the maps show a blue squiggly line that goes almost right by the prisoner of war camp. And what are blue squiggly lines on a map? They're rivers. And the river was called the Salt River. So these ex-sailors, these imprisoned sailors, got into their mind, they would build a boat, a collapsible boat. Part of them would, and the other part would be digging a tunnel under the fence. And then they would take their little boat and they'd go down to the Salt River. They called it the Great Salt River. And they would float all the way to it meets Colorado, then all the way, eventually winding up on the coast of Mexico, where they would flag a U-boat. That was their idea. Didn't work that way, because the Salt River was nothing but dirt at that point. I mean, generally our rivers are dirt here. So I thought, without any big ideas. That's in a book in itself. So I did a time jump history for Desert Run, using, instead of 25 soldiers or Navy people, German-made Navy people escaped, I made it 28 so I could write a book about the 3 fictional ones. And that was popular. In fact, for the first time, it almost doesn't seem like it should be this way, but it is. For the first time, I got a male fellowship readership because they really wanted to read about those. We call them out here. We call those sailors. We called them the mad boatmen of Arizona. Mm-hmm. So that book did well. But then I decided I was going to get grim again. And Desert Cut, which is about female genital mutilation. And I had learned, because of my job at the newspaper, that yes, it is still being practiced. And it is being practiced in America, and it is being practiced in New York. It is being practiced in Arizona. And I was able to track down some people who were involved with that particular community. By then, Arizona had made a law against the kind of polygamy that was being practiced in Arizona. You could only have an 18-year-old wife. That's all you could have. But they also got around to making a law, and there had never been one because it was a hidden problem. They made a law against female genital mutilation in Arizona. And that's about when I got started being known as what Publishers Weekly call me a mystery writers with a social conscience. Let me get some more books over here. I just write too many books. All right. I'm not even going to show all my books. There's just too many. But in the meantime, now you've got to remember, this is somebody who had never even planned to be a writer, and I'm writing all these books while I'm working at the paper. How I did that was by getting up every morning at 4 o'clock and in the morning, and then I would write until 8 o'clock. And then I would get dressed and go to work at the newspaper where I would write some more. But after Desert Cut, and then also Desert Wives had been a national bestseller, I had a lot of people writing me about what happens to boys in polygamy. And to hear polygamy discussed kind of broadly, you would think that a polygamy compound would be absolute heaven for men, hell for women, but heaven for men. But that's not the way it works, because look at it this way. If one man can have 10 wives, about 50% of people who are born are male. So if one man can have 10 wives, that means 9 men are not going to have any wives at all. But the polygamists have figured out a way to handle that problem. Most of the male children are thrown out of the compounds when they turn 13. And these kids are put in a van and they're trucked down to places like Phoenix, Flagstaff, Arizona, Oklahoma City, and even California and Nevada. And they dump them on the street. The education in a polygamy compound is terrible because all they're taught is a rewritten Book of Mormon, rewritten to make a stronger case for polygamy in the modern world. And they're not taught math. They're not taught reading skills. They're not taught writing skills, obviously. And so these kids, these boys, 13 years old and up, are dumped out on the streets of these big cities. So I give you a guess as to what they wind up doing to make money and to support themselves, to buy food. They don't even have enough education to fill out a McDonald's job application. So I put all that in Desert Lost by telling the story of one boy that I happen to know about who got caught up in that situation. And of course, there's a murder, and Lena Jones solves the problem and saves the boy. In the same way, oh, that's right. This is the only book that I wrote that I did not get the idea from a newspaper. I got the idea from watching a movie. And the movie was called The Conqueror. Has anybody here ever seen the movie The Conqueror? It stars John Wayne as Genghis Khan. It's considered one of the worst movies ever made. Definitely John Wayne's worst movie. So it was during a 3-day, I think it was a Labor Day weekend. And I was sitting in front of the TV watching just a movie marathon. And one of the movies was John Wayne in The Conqueror, dressed as Genghis Khan. And I was giggling all the way through it because it was hysterical. I like bad movies, by the way. If I've got a really serious flaw, it's that. If a movie is bad enough, I will go see it. So then you know how they have the announcers on these big movie marathons? The announcer, before he hit for a commercial break, said that, now many of you may not know this, but John Wayne eventually died of cancer, as did 50% of the people that worked on that movie in Arizona. And I thought, what? And I started being a reporter, started doing research. And I'll tell you what the book turned out to be, although John Wayne's ghost is in it. Here's actual facts. Between 1951 and 1992, 928 nuclear bombs were exploded at the Nevada test site, an average of 2 bombs per month for 41 years. The last above ground test took place November 4, 1962. After that, all tests were conducted underground, which was supposedly safer. However, the surrounding desert floor was replete not only with mine shafts, but naturally occurring air vents that continued to release radioactivity material into the atmosphere. Now, let's see, perhaps the most notorious of these was the one that was set off in May 19th, 1953, during the filming of The Conqueror. And that was, let's see, that bomb was a 32 kilotron bomb named Dirty Harry because of its devastating effects on the local flora and fauna and human beings. The westerly winds brought the radioactive fallout all the way to the West Coast, and it set out Geiger counters in Central Park. So I had to go through interviewing people who had relatives who died because of radiation poisoning during that time. And that was miserable. That was absolutely miserable. They now have a charitable fund called the Downwinders, because to help people medically who were hurt by the fallout. By then, I had decided that, wisely for the first time in my life, that I could not keep writing books and be a full-time reporter, because I was just seeing so much. And one of the things that even when I started writing these long feature articles, they kept using me to review art shows and, for some strange reason, music concerts. So I started showing up like a groupie at rock and roll shows. And I would bring my kids along and they'd go, "Oh, can I get to meet Jerry Garcia?" And yes, they did. So they loved it, and my kids did anyway, and my grandkids. But they were very angry at me when I had to resign from the Tribune because I just couldn't keep writing and doing all of that work. But they're speaking to me again now, so it's okay. Writing mystery novels, you get to meet a lot of murderers, because I was pen pal of several guys on death row here in Arizona. We do have the death penalty, still do. They're just trying to figure out a way to kill somebody without hurting them too much. But Desert Rage actually I wrote that one for my own mental health. Because one day in the newspaper here, now here's a weird one. There was an article about Arizona having trouble finding a state executioner. The other one had died, and nobody wanted to be the state executioner, and they wanted it to be a doctor. Well, one of the first parts being a doctor is do no harm. I'm not sure if that's part of the Hippocratic Oath, but it may be. Do no harm. And that kind of means don't kill your patient. So they just went through hell and finally wound up finding a guy whose mind was all messed up because he'd been in, not Vietnam, he'd been in Afghanistan, but he was a doctor, so they hired him. This is about what happens when you try to find a state executioner who is a doctor. And yes, somebody gets murdered. Well, that was my therapy. I killed the legal executioner. Now, I told you that my Lena Jones had a very rough childhood. She was actually molested at one of her foster families. So after I had taken revenge with Desert Rage, I decided to let Lena Jones have her revenge. And in Desert Vengeance, she catches up with the guy who raped her when she was a 9-year-old child. And I won't tell you what happens to him because it's pretty grim. But as it turns out, somebody beat Lena to the punch and she was dead. He was dead when she got there. I enjoyed that a great deal. But I had been wanting to have her kill him and torture him for a while before she killed him, but I decided, no, she's a better person than I am. So the 10th book in the Lena Jones series was called Desert Redemption. And remember, I said she didn't know who her parents were. She'd been a foundling. In Desert Redemption, she finds out what happened to her parents and why no one ever showed up to rescue her from the foster homes. And I cried all the way through writing this. No, I did not kill Lena. I would never kill Lena. I made Lena's dreams come true, but only after she had gone through some more hell. And also it was, since so many of my books had been about real cults that exist here in Arizona and other places, I came back to cults for this final one, and which is how she found out what happened to her family. So this is what happens when a writer does not mean to be a writer, but life happens anyway. You know, you can plan it all you want, and then you just might wind up doing something different, which I did. After I finished the Lena Jones series, in the meantime, I was writing books about animals, still fiction, mysteries, but very lighthearted. They're what you call cozies. And my detective in that, well, actually a sleuth, was she was a zookeeper. In fact, once I retired from the Tribune, I became a volunteer at the Phoenix Zoo, which was started by the Maytag family, by the way, your washers and dryers. And it was really fun, but now I've started to do series, and it's based in, I think Liana mentioned this, it's based in Paris of 1922, between the two wars, first and second. And my sleuth in that is an American artist, and of course I had to have an artist get in there so I could write. I was writing my own opinion about things and giving them to my sleuth. But I'm having a ball with it right now. The publisher is fighting with my agent over contracts, so that's where it is. And I've already written the second book in that. But anyway, like I say, life is what's happened when you make other plans. That's probably true for everybody. I did learn a few things, and you might want to take a note on this because these are great things to remember. I learned, number 1, show up. Number 2, tell the truth. Number 3, pay attention. Number 4, do your best. And number 5, and the trickiest, don't be attached to the outcome, because it may not be what you think it should be. So, any questions from anyone?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. It's pretty amazing. Thank you so much for sharing all this. So these rules that you listed, are these rules for life or rules for writers, rules for whom?
Wait, what?
Rules that you listed, rules, these rules at the end of your talk that you listed, that say like show up at the about outcome, don't depend on outcome. So these rules for writers or rules for gender, rules for life?
Yeah, here's the thing. Writers read me, and then, well, of course, readers read me. But what I do in the back of my books, in the author's notes, I generally tell the true story of what actually happened and what the outcome of it was. So they go through the fun of fiction with Lena Jones, who's very feisty, and she shoots straight. Because this is Arizona. Everybody carries a gun out here. I mean, when I first came here from New York and I went down to the library, this is the first thing I do. I go to the library, and there on the front of the library door is a sign, please check weapons at the front desk. I remember thinking, holy Toledo, I don't know if I belong here. But I've grown to, look, this is a crazy state. It really is. We're supposedly a red state, and yet we've had more female governors than any other state. And we sent the first woman to the Supreme Court. So, but then I finally figured out how that happened, because Arizona is used to women running ranches. So the voters think, well, okay, if the dame can run a ranch, why can't she run something else? So in a red state, we have a blue heart. All right, any other? Yeah, Esther.
Thank you so much, Betty. I'm just like so impressed how a lot of your books are based on social consciousness. And
Right.
So I'm coming from a background, I mean, it's similar to a cult. It's Jewish Orthodoxy, and it's some of the stuff is like crazy. I have a daughter in there that I can't get out. It's like they close ranks. So I'm wondering, like, I'd love to write a book about it, but I don't know how successful it'll be. I mean, I could base it, I could make it fiction, so it's, you know, more palatable.
Yeah.
But because they have so much power, like politically, I don't even know if I should even try.
Well, you could say the same thing about polygamists too, because the polygamists, they have a lot of weight here in Arizona. They really do. They have functioned here for 100 years without any problems whatsoever. This is the first problem they ran into. But here's exactly what I did. I mentioned the writers, the where is it? Oh boy, I really wrote a long one here. After I sucked in my reader with a mystery and told the story of a fictional young girl being saved by a fictional brave woman, and that makes them read it. And then I turn to the author's note and I give them all the nitty-gritty. That way you can do two things at once. You can tell a story that, see, here's the thing, especially with my book about female genital mutilation, nobody's going to go to the library and say, oh, I think I'll get a book about female genital mutilation today. They're not going to say that. But if you tell them it's about girls who are kidnapped and then are returned alive but different, then that's a mystery. They will take something in a mystery that they would never read if they knew it was real. So by writing the mystery, which is an extremely popular genre, extremely popular, they can tell the story that sucks people in, but then you can tell the truth in the author's note. I did it in 3 of my books because I needed 4 of my books because I needed to, because the stories were so weird. People would think, oh, well, she just made this up. But no, once you start going chapter and verse, then they read it and they go, oh my God. there were people, well, and also I have to mention that when Desert Wives, my polygamy book, was the first one where I went on a national tour. And every place I went, they wanted to hear about it. And so what I did, I mean, this is dirty pool, but I did it. I handed out the phone numbers of Arizona senators and representatives and told everybody to call and ask why they condone child rape. Okay, so you can do two things at once when you do it this way. Don't remember when I was saying about the different things that I've learned. Don't be attached to the outcome. Write the book. Don't worry about it. Just write the book. Don't worry about the outcome. Get it done. Get it written.
All right, thank you.
And it's also a healing process when you do that. I can't begin to tell you how angry I was when I did my research on both the polygamy book and the mutilation book. I mean, I was so angry, I was just shaking. And I felt better once I wrote the books plural. Okay, any other questions? You're all on mute, you guys that are calling in.
You could also ask questions through reactions, you know, the reactions and the raise hand. You could raise your hand, and if you have any questions. Unmute yourself at least, because we don't have very big audience.
Yeah, can you unmute yourself, guys? Unmuted. Okay, yeah, maybe that means no questions.
Someone
I have a question.
unmuted.
Oh,
Yes.
okay, great. Great. Who am I talking to?
You're talking to Tina.
Okay.
I'm in Tennessee,
Okay, very
and
nice.
got real excited about being able to meet you. And yes, your books are amazing.
Thank you.
And when you were talking about this, I was talking to someone recently who had a very bad experience with an uncle, and come to find out, in Mississippi, Tennessee, and Arkansas during World War II, many of the Nazi soldiers were brought here to work to build roads and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they were never even seen as Germans. They were accepted,
Right.
you know?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And some really bad things happened to her family with one of the men.
Oh.
And yeah, and it sort of reminded me of what you were talking about. So
Right.
yeah, your stories are amazing, but the great thing about it is they're shedding light on the truth.
That's right. You have to, like I say, the polygamists lived here without any trouble for over 100 years. And so the wives got younger and younger and younger, and now they're child molesters is what they are. They're pedophiles.
They are.
And that's been brought out. Plus, they were cheating the government of tax money because they weren't really a religion. Not at all.
Not at all.
No. Although Warren Jeffs, the leader of that particular compound, did set himself up as a prophet. They have to refer to him by phone now in prison as prophet. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Prophet of evil.
That is correct. That is put very well.
Yeah.
Hey, any other questions? You can ask more than one if you want.
Yeah, I have a question about where did the polygamists, first of all, are they still existing in Arizona? They still exist in Arizona, and second of all, where did they take these wives, these kids?
Yeah.
Found them on the streets, or they're incest, or their kids, their own kids? I don't know.
Right now, most of the wives have been born in the compounds, but there are compounds in Arizona, there still are, Oklahoma, Nevada, there's some in Utah, but now here's the interesting thing. Utah tends to be very much quicker in arresting pedophiles. They will do that. So, but like I say, that entire area is called where all the polygamy compounds is called the Arizona Strip. It's out in the middle of barren desert. It's beautiful, but it's very barren. Oh, another thing about the polygamists is They believe in Armageddon, and they are collecting arms. And in Arizona, there is no limit to how many firearms you can own. And plus, we allow explosives. They're called recreational explosives, believe it or not. Now, I told you this is a crazy state. And they're stockpiling explosives. And because of the area they live in are a lot of canyons and caverns. And they stockpile their arms and explosives in these caverns for Armageddon. It's when the white race will take over the world. That's how they see it. These people are, and I don't want to be too harsh on the women, but because the women give their children, their little girls, to these old farts, but they have been raised to believe this, to believe that that's the truth. When I was writing Desert Wives, they weren't allowed televisions, they weren't allowed radio, and of course, not newspapers, because keeping people in ignorance is the best way to control them. When you can control the news, personally control the news, then you can do anything. And I can tell you, as a reporter, believe me, the journalism is not what you think it is. I mean, I know it's one of the most thrilling conspiracy theories that all of us newspapers are together to write stories to pull our political weight. You've never seen as many fights and arguments in your life as you've seen in a newsroom, because you have reporters who are all the way from right-wingers to left-wingers to anarchists. I mean, we're all there in one big ugly lump, but we can get along sometimes.
Yeah. One more question, if you allow, about you don't have any background in police or being any. So how did you come up with this idea to write mystery novels? But you no forensic background, no police background. I always assume that people who write this things they have.
Okay, there you go. My uncle is a Phoenix police officer, and my first cousin, my favorite cousin, as a matter of fact, was he's retired now, police chief. So whenever I had a question about how things really worked, I just call him up. And those were very funny phone calls too. It's too bad I didn't tape any, because I would call. My family, by the way, is from Tennessee and Alabama. So I would call up and I said, Cousin Jenny, can you tell me how long you can keep somebody in jail without pressing charges? And he'd say 48 hours. He says, but sometimes they get lost. So I got the nitty gritty.
Oh, good.
That's how. Plus, also, I read a lot of books. Oh, and I would do drive-bys with the Scottsdale Police Department, ride-alongs. You can, as long as you don't have any felonies on your record, you can make an appointment to get in a car with a police officer and ride around with him during his shift. So I've done that several times. And then plus each police department across the country has a PI, a public information officer. And if you have problems and you want to know how one particular legal thing works, you just get on the internet and you ring up the PIO, is what they're called, public information officer of the particular police station you're interested in. It could be the sheriff, it could be the actual police, it could be the state police. Just find the one that you want to ask questions and call them up, because they love to answer questions. They're very good about it, because they want you to write. They want to look like good guys. So they don't want to look like this steel wall who's none of your business, citizen. That's not what they're into. They're saying, oh, it's so nice to hear from you again. And then they will answer what you ask. It's kind of fun. If I had chosen, I don't think I would have had as much fun if I'd have chosen a different genre to tell my stories. So I'm very much in love with legal murder, which is what I do. I'm a legal murderess. I think I've killed around 52 people now, something like that. Yeah. It's like Lay's potato chips. You can't have just one.
Yeah, okay, so you have some instincts in yourself, some desire to get rid of bad people. Get rid of bad people as fast as possible, right?
It's healthy. It's healthy because murder is against the law. And if you kill someone in real life, you'll go to prison. If you get caught, and chances are you will, because police departments have science departments now that could make a university jealous. I mean, they'll catch you. They will. They'll catch you. So kill them in a book. Oh, by the way, I have killed one of my former bosses 4 times. Yeah. But I've killed her as a man, I've killed her as a woman, I've killed her as bi, and I think I killed her as a man twice. Yeah. And I feel better about her each time.
Yeah, that's amazing. So when you just imagined or gave certain character traits to your former boss, right? So
Yeah.
certain character was recognizable for you, right?
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Writing is fun. The hardest it was when I was still working full time at the Tribune and was having to get up at 4 a.m. I mean, I was a wilting flower by 10 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would have to go to some rock concert. But then I got to meet all these people I really wanted to meet. So the Grateful Dead concerts were the most fun. Oh, and the Jimmy Buffett concerts. That's where the Grateful Dead concerts are where the Deadheads go and smoke their pot. But the Jimmy Buffett concerts are where the stockbrokers go to throw up on their shirts, which happened to me at a Jimmy Buffett concert. They drink so much, those stockbrokers. Oh, geez.
I have a question.
Yeah,
So,
yes, sir.
okay, so I mean, I like writing prose nonfiction. How do I know that I have what it takes? Like, do I need to be particularly like flowery? Like, I don't know if I have what it takes to write fiction.
But I teach writing, and what I tell people is read Hemingway. Read Hemingway. The age of flowery writing is over. The Victorians loved it, but all the Victorians are dead now. And now simple, clear prose. But don't forget, I was a reporter before I began writing books, mysteries. So don't worry about that. Just get the thing written. Just get it written. Okay. You will learn. You will be a beginner as when you write your first page. But by the time you get to page 300, you're going to know what you're doing. So don't worry about that. You will know.
Do you have like a sounding board in the beginning? Like somebody to just, you obviously don't have a publisher yet or anything.
No, don't worry about that at the beginning. Remember, don't be attached to the outcome. That can hurt you when you say, oh, I'll never get this published. Don't worry about it. Just write it. And then you can worry about it. But and let me give you my email address. It's okay. Everybody get your pens and pencils, whatever. Okay, it's Webb, WEBB. That's my the way my name is spelled. And as one word, Webb Scottsdale, SCOTTSDALE at
Webb
WEBB.
BB, right?
Scottsdale, SCOTTSDALE at AOL.com.
Scottsdale?
Yeah, Scottsdale. That's where I live. Scottsdale. That's where Lena Jones lives too. In fact, her office is right down the street.
So Webb, WEBBSCOTTS.
DAL. Yeah, Scottsdale. You know what? I will send that to you. I'll email that to you. Okay.
Yeah, but the people, if they're interested, Scottsdale or Scottsdale.
Yeah, I got it. Scottsdale at AOL.com.
Yeah, I'll say it again. Webb Scottsdale@aol.com.
Tail or Dale? I don't know.
SCOTTS, D as in Donald, ALE.
Okay, Scottsdale. Okay.
Yeah,
yes, okay.
Scottsdale, like the town.
Mhm.
But we're called the
Yeah.
most western town in the United States. And maybe that used to be true. But we have a lot of art galleries and designer boutiques here now. But we're still pretty western. They're still carrying guns in town. Holsters, very strange.
Okay, so Betty or Miss Webb, whatever you prefer to be
Betty,
called.
Betty,
yeah,
Betty.
so I'm very, very grateful that you found time and shared your writing secrets, your positional life. It's very
Yeah.
fascinating, your story. And
Yeah.
your books are very, very much appreciated that you found
Okay.
time to share with us.
Yeah.
Unless anyone has some urgent questions to ask, we will have to say goodbye. Yes?
Yeah.
Unless-
And if anybody emails me, and you can, mention that this was that you met me here at the library.
Yes, and also I'm gonna we are doing recording now of this conversation, and it will be placed on our Facebook,
That'll be fine.
library Facebook, and on YouTube. So I advise you to look at it again and like it if you liked it. Okay,
Okay,
I
great.
hope you did. Okay,
Oh.
thank you so much.
Okay,
All right.
thank you. Nice
Thank
meeting
you.
you guys.
Nice
Bye-bye.
to meet you. Nice to
Yeah.
come.
Good luck.
Thank you
Good luck.
so much.
Write that book, Esther.
I will. Thank you.
Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot for coming. Thank you.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, a little more. Stop